3,000 meters beneath the surface, where daylight died so long ago it feels like a memory, something moves through the dark. Not gently, not slowly, with purpose, with hunger. Down here, the ocean isn't water, it's pressure, it's weight. It's a crushing, bone-splintering force that would flatten a human body in seconds. 10 atmospheres squeezing every square inch, cold sharp enough to shut down a heart. And inside that silent blackness, a sperm whale has detected something alive. Its heartbeat, once a steady 60 beats per minute at the surface, drops like a falling stone. 50, 30, 15, 10. The whale is slipping into the state only it can survive, shutting down everything unnecessary, rationing oxygen with mathematical precision. Every organ except the essential ones goes dim. It has already been holding its breath for nearly an hour. Down here, that's normal. Down here, that's survival. And then it unleashes the sound. A burst of clicks so violent they would blow out your eardrums instantly. Rapid pulses, each one a shockwave of acoustic energy stronger than the roar of a jet engine. They rattle through the water like seismic tremors. The whale is building a picture, not with light, but with sound, mapping shape, muscle, motion. And the echo that comes back is enormous. Arms longer than a bus, suckers lined with hooked blades sharp enough to peel flesh from bone. A creature no human has seen alive in the wild for more than a few seconds. The giant squid, the true titan of the deep, drifting through the abyss like a ghost that never evolved eyes for sunlight. This is the world sperm whales live in. A vertical realm miles deep where pressure crushes steel and no light has ever existed. On land, life depends on the sun. Here, life depends on something else. Engineering and evolution pushed past the limit of what should be possible. And that's the unsettling part, because nothing about sperm whales is normal. Not their bodies, not their brains, not their behavior. Not the way they exist in a region where almost nothing else can. We know the habits of lions. We understand wolves. We track sharks. We watch elephants. But sperm whales, the largest predators on Earth by weight, remain shadows. They hide in a zone we can barely access. 70% of their lives is spent where our submarines can't operate without risking catastrophic implosion. We know them through scars, half-seen silhouettes, and sonar recordings more mysterious than alien signals. They've been called sea monsters for centuries, but not because they're terrifying, because they're unknown. Even their daily routines defy logic. Some days, pods of whales drift upright in the water, vertical, motionless, like a submerged forest of gray stone pillars. Sleeping, if you can even call it that. No one knows why they choose this posture. No one knows how long they stay. No one knows what happens in their minds during these suspended moments. And it gets stranger. They speak. Not in moans or whistles like dolphins, in coded sequences, Kodas, long strings of clicks that vary in rhythm, spacing, and structure. Patterns so complex, some researchers think different whale clans speak in different accents. Their brains are built for sound, for information, for communication on a scale we don't understand. Imagine an animal with a brain 6 times larger than yours, living in a world you've never seen, speaking in a pattern we can't decode. And then imagine meeting it face to face. Divers have. And what happens borders on impossible. You're floating in blue emptiness, weightless, exposed, completely at the mercy of whatever chooses to approach you. Then the water around you shifts. A shape forms, massive, silent, ancient. A sperm whale glides toward you. The clicks begin, soft at first, like curious tapping, but they're not tapping, they are scans. The whale is imaging you from the inside out, your ribs, your heartbeat, the air in your lungs. It builds a perfect 3-dimensional map of your body, cell by cell, without ever needing light. Sometimes they circle, sometimes they hover with a strange tilt, positioning themselves to read the echoes more clearly. And sometimes, in rare encounters that leave divers shaking long afterward, the whale responds with its own patterns, like it's speaking. Not to intimidate, not to warn, to communicate. Because here's the part that breaks your sense of superiority. These animals have the same neural structures linked to emotion, empathy, and social intelligence in humans, and they've had them for millions of years longer than we have. They might be using one of the most sophisticated communication systems on Earth, but we're the ones who almost wiped them out. For centuries, humans only saw sperm whales from the surface, and everything about them felt wrong. In the 1700s, sailors called them sea devils, leviathans, beasts from the abyss. Imagine standing on the deck of a small wooden ship in the middle of the Atlantic, and a head the size of a truck rises from the fog. 15 meters of muscle and unknown intent, exhaling a plume of steam that smells like decay. You wouldn't think mammal, you'd think monster. The sounds didn't help. Ships crossing open water would hear rhythmic knocking coming from beneath the hull, deep, resonant pounding. Crews thought they were being stalked. Some believed it was ghosts or the ship splitting itself apart. They had no idea they were listening to whales talking. Then there were the scars. When whalers finally killed enough individuals to examine them, they found circular wounds covering the whales' heads and bodies, some wider than a man's hand. Deep, round injuries surrounded by smaller cuts, suction marks, evidence of battles fought in blackness against something with hooked tentacles and unimaginable strength. The myth of the Kraken wasn't fantasy, it was carved into living flesh. Fear became real in 1820, when the whaling ship Essex was struck by a sperm whale in the Pacific. Not once, twice. Hard enough to shatter the hull, hard enough to sink the ship. Survivors drifted for months in lifeboats, starving, desperate, some forced into cannibalism. They described a whale that seemed aware of them, aware of the ship, aware of what it was doing. Herman Melville took that story and built Moby Dick from it. The white whale wasn't just fiction, it was the human fear of something deeper, something intelligent, something that lived in a world we couldn't reach but could reach us. Then came the tragedy. In the 1700s and 1800s, sperm whales became the most valuable animals on Earth for one reason: the massive chamber inside their head, the spermaceti organ. It held a unique oil, clean, odorless, stable, capable of burning brighter and longer than anything else humans had. It lit entire cities, fueled factories, lubricated machines. It was industrial gold. They adapted. They fled at the first sign of a ship. Mothers shielded calves. Some whales fought back, smashing boats, flipping them, dragging men down. But they couldn't fight steel-tipped harpoons. They couldn't escape steam-powered vessels. By the 1900s, sperm whales were nearly gone, over 1 million killed. entire populations erased. And because they reproduce slowly, one calf every 5 to 7 years, they couldn't recover. Not until the 1986 global whaling ban. Even then, it was barely enough. What survives today is a fraction of the ancient population, a remnant. A whisper of what once filled the oceans. But to understand what these whales truly are, you have to return to the deep, the place no one sees. Because diving to 3,000 meters means entering pressure so extreme it can collapse metal like foil. Yet sperm whales do it dozens of times every single day. Their bodies aren't just adapted, they are engineered by evolution toward perfection. That massive head? It isn't a battering ram, it's a biological sonar cannon. Sound begins deep in the nasal complex, travels through a ton of waxy oil, and focuses into a beam so intense it can stun or kill prey outright. At over 230 decibels, it is one of the loudest sounds produced by any living creature. People who felt these clicks describe them not as noise, but as physical blows, like being punched in the chest by sound itself. Their lungs? They collapse deliberately during descent, preventing nitrogen from dissolving into the blood. Their ribs fold inward rather than breaking. Their blood binds oxygen with frightening efficiency. Their muscles are packed with myoglobin so dense it stains their flesh nearly black, storing oxygen directly in the tissue. Their heart slows to a near-death state, 10 beats per minute. Enough to keep the brain alive, enough to keep the hunt going. Everything else waits. And then there's the communication system, the Kodas, complex click sequences. Not instinctive, but learned. Passed down like culture, like knowledge, like inheritance. Different groups speak differently. Different oceans have different dialects. Whales born into a pod must learn their group's sequences by listening, mimicking, practicing. It's the closest non-human example of cultural transmission we've ever seen in a wild animal. Some researchers think sperm whale communication may have grammar, rules, patterns, structure. If that's true, they're not just communicating, they're conversing. And honestly, if you're still with me down here in the dark, listening to this like an echo from the abyss, you already know what to do. It helps more than you think. But here's something I want you to answer honestly. If you were suspended 3,000 meters down and a whale approached you, scanning your heartbeat, studying you, would you stay or would you try to escape? I want to see what kind of person you think you are. They dive through a world where pressure rises like a living thing, squeezing harder with every meter. And somehow, instead of breaking them, that pressure becomes part of their design. A force they've mastered rather than feared. But the real mystery isn't how they survive the deep. It's how completely their existence shapes the ocean around them. A sperm whale isn't just a predator, it's an ecosystem moving through water. A single whale influences life on a scale that scientists only recently realized. When they return from a dive, they release nutrients from the deep back toward the surface, especially iron, the rarest and most essential ingredient for plankton. And plankton are everything. They support the entire oceanic food web. They produce half the oxygen we breathe. They regulate Earth's carbon cycle. One whale, rising from the abyss to breathe, fertilizes the sea. A pod can shift the chemistry of an entire region. A whole population can influence climate. Imagine that, a creature we nearly erased, quietly supporting the planet that tried to destroy it. This isn't exaggeration, it's measurable. Remove the whales and the ocean becomes poorer, emptier, less alive. Keep them, and the entire system stabilizes. They are engineers of the sea, maintaining the balance of life with every breath. And then there is what happens when a whale dies. A whale fall is one of the most profound natural events on Earth. A single colossal body sinking through the water column for hours, descending into darkness until it touches the seafloor. And when it lands, it becomes a city, an explosion of life where there was none. Sharks tear open the flesh, crabs swarm the cavities, worms burrow into bone, microbes bloom. Thousands of organisms feed for decades. Entire species have evolved to survive only on whale falls. If the deep ocean is a desert, then a dead whale is a sudden metropolis, sustaining generations. Life becoming life, death becoming a world. But the living sperm whale does something even more remarkable. It exists across dimensions of the ocean that most creatures never touch. It feeds in darkness. It breeds in sunlight. It travels in pods led by matriarchs, older females who hold knowledge passed down through generations. Migration routes, safe waters, ancestral feeding grounds. These paths aren't random. They're inherited. They are maps written not on paper, but in memory. And when you look closer at the structure of a pod, you see something almost human. Mothers nursing calves, older siblings assisting, females sharing childcare, adults forming bonds that last a lifetime, males leaving at adolescence to roam alone across hemispheres, yet still returning to social groups for breeding and rest. They're not just animals, they're societies. A sperm whale doesn't merely survive the ocean, it shapes it, it remakes it, it defines it. And yet, the deepest strangeness lies in the one thing we understand the least: how they think. Their brains are enormous, but it's not size that's impressive, it's architecture. Regions dedicated to sound processing, memory, emotion, spatial reasoning. Pathways that suggest capabilities we've never measured. They perceive their world in dimensions we can't imagine, not through sight, but through echo, vibration, resonance, through pressure and distance and movement and rhythm. Where we see water, they see geometry, motion, and meaning. They speak in clicks that travel miles, revealing information we cannot fathom. And here's the unsettling part. Some clicks are used only socially, not for hunting, not for navigating, for interacting, for talking. We might be listening to conversations we can't translate. In 2021, the Earth Species Project launched one of the most ambitious experiments in modern science, using AI to decode sperm whale communication. Hundreds of hours of audio, thousands of Kodas sequences, pattern recognition far beyond what human ears can detect. Early findings suggest structure, order, perhaps even syntax. If that's true, these whales might not simply be communicating ideas, they may be forming them. And if they are, then we are not alone in our intelligence. We never were. Now imagine this, an animal capable of speaking across miles of water, choosing silence around us. An animal with the power to kill us effortlessly, choosing curiosity instead. An animal we hunted to the brink of extinction, choosing forgiveness, or at least tolerance. That alone should change how we see them. But the deeper truth is this: sperm whales shouldn't exist. Not with these abilities, not with this biology, not with this level of organization. And yet they do. They dive where submarines implode. They speak languages we don't understand. They navigate oceans like continents. They raise families in structures more stable than our own. They shape ecosystems and influence climate cycles. They battle monsters in darkness we've never witnessed. They survive pressures that shatter steel. And despite everything, they've survived us. They are the last living giants of a world we barely know. And here's where you come in. Actually, you, right now. If scientists ever decode sperm whale language, what do you think we'll hear first? Curiosity, warning, confusion, or something completely unexpected? Drop your guess in the comments. I want to see how people imagine that first moment, because one day it's going to happen. And if you're the kind of person who wants to be here when that moment arrives, you already know how to stay in this story with me. Because the ending of this one isn't really an ending. Sperm whales aren't just creatures of the deep. They're reminders of how little we understand, how little we've seen, how small we are in a world built by giants. And maybe, just maybe, they're waiting for us to finally start listening. The truth is, our relationship with sperm whales is built on misunderstandings stacked over centuries. We saw them as monsters when they were simply mysteries. We feared them because they lived in a world we couldn't see, couldn't enter, couldn't imagine. And whenever humanity doesn't understand something, we default to fear. But even now, with submarines, sonar, satellites, deep-sea cameras, the distance between our world and theirs is massive. We've mapped the moon in higher detail than the abyss where these whales live daily. We've studied Martian soil more thoroughly than the water columns sperm whales move through with casual grace. And that should terrify us a little. Not because of what they might be, but because of how much we still don't know. Every dive they take is a descent into a world humans aren't built for. Every breath they exhale is the release of nutrients that feed life at the surface. Every migration across thousands of miles is guided by memories older than our civilizations. Every coda they speak is a line of communication we haven't unlocked. Every scar they carry is a chapter of a story we were never meant to witness. They are ancient. They are intelligent. They are essential. And they are still out there, right now, diving into realms where light has never existed, hunting creatures no human has seen alive, communicating in languages we haven't translated, navigating a world that doesn't care if we understand it. The more we learn, the more impossible they seem. How does an animal survive 3,000-meter dives dozens of times a day without suffering the bends, heart failure, or brain damage? How does a creature with no hands develop culture? How does a species nearly hunted to extinction maintain social structures that take decades to form? How does something so massive live in a world so dark, so crushing, so hostile, and treat us with curiosity instead of violence? We don't have answers. Not yet. Maybe not ever. And that's the point. The deep sea isn't just unexplored, it's unknowable in ways we're only beginning to accept. And sperm whales are the ambassadors of that world. The living proof that the ocean doesn't follow our rules. They don't fit into our categories. They don't behave according to our expectations. They don't exist for our understanding. They simply exist. And somehow, that's more humbling than anything monstrous. Because when you strip away the legends, the fear, the stories written by sailors trembling on wooden ships, you're left with something far greater. A mind that evolved in darkness. A hunter engineered by pressure. A family structure built on memory. A language carried across oceans. A body shaped by the abyss. A life that bridges two worlds. An intelligence we haven't measured. And when one of these giants rises to the surface, breaking through the blue with a plume of breath that sounds like the earth exhaling, you're not just looking at an animal. You're looking at a survivor, a teacher, a relic, a mystery, a mirror of what intelligence can be when it isn't shaped by sunlight and land. And maybe that's why they feel almost mythical, because they are. So let me ask you one final question and answer honestly. If we do one day translate their language and we finally understand what they've been saying all this time, do you think we'll be proud of what they've heard from us? Or ashamed? If thoughts like that hit you the way they hit me, then stick around. We're going deeper than the ocean ever planned to reveal. Because the story of sperm whales isn't finished. It's barely begun. And the next chapter might not be written by us.